It is February 26th, and I'm here on the 16th because it is a special day. My mom, she works at the OECD, and today I decided to come here and check it out. Overall, the 16th is a pretty boring and not central area. But there is a really good pizza place over there and a few really nice cafes. So if I worked at the OECD, I would just sneak out the whole time to eat pizza. So we are going in. I got my badge thingy, and I heard there is a dressing code in the OECD, and I didn't bring my tie. I hope they let me in. Oh my god. All the security stuff here makes it clear that this is not another conference hall. This feels like the Ministry of Magic in Harry Potter. It is still pretty early in the morning, so there isn't a lot of people. I guess the delegates are still having breakfast. I knew that the OECD deals with many different topics, but tractor codes? That's something new. Here's the schedule for today. Child well-being, we don't care about that. Tractor codes. Biodiversity framework. Technical meaning, yeah, a bunch of adult stuff. Cocktail. Okay, I need to check that out. The OECD is an international organization where governments discuss different issues to make better policies to improve citizens' lives. So you're the delegate of Switzerland. What are you doing here today?
I'm attending a workshop that deals with the competition law and pharmaceutical products.
So what have you discovered through working with people from other countries?
Well, I think the most important thing is the diversity of viewpoints. On any given topic, people have very different viewpoints depending on where they come from and depending on their legal government system, how these systems deal with different topics. So it's really sort of a training here to learn about different countries and different systems.
Mm. So that is the conference room. That's where the decisions are being made. So normally this room is full of delegates. You press the button and everybody sees you on these screens, and the translators are over there translating everything you say to English or French. So it's really modern. So yesterday's conference here was called the Nordic Way, and the Minister of Education of Norway was here, and this very chair sat the president. So if you want to speak, you go like that, and press this button. It's really cool. What do you like about your job?
What I enjoy is studying and discussing technical topics that are of very strong everyday relevance with other experts.
What is a difficult part of your job?
Well, it's the other experts, so I have to be smart to talk to those people.
Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's very quiet here during the sessions. Oh my goodness. Thank you for doing this interview. So I want to ask you, what is your job in Israel and how do you contribute to the OECD?
I'm a Senior Deputy Director General for Natural Resources at the Ministry for Environmental Protection in Israel. And as part of my job, I am the Israeli delegate to the OECD in some of the subjects that I am dealing with, like water, biodiversity, pest control, and so on. It seems like although we are coming from different nations, different areas and different culture, there are some problems like biodiversity that are mutual to all of us. And some of the solutions are also the same solution that we can use all over the place, and we can actually gain a lot of experience and data and knowledge from other people's experiences.
This place is called the Red Chairs Cafe for an obvious reason. And delegates meet up here to discuss all their adult stuff. The cafeteria has to have good cakes to keep the delegates in good mood. Check it out. You represent Hungary at the OECD. I want to ask you, what is an important project right now for Hungary?
Well, it's my pleasure to be here today, and thank you very much for this interview. One of the main things that Hungary finds very interesting right now is the Going Digital Horizontal project of the OECD. Right now, there is a ministerial level summit that's going to happen in 2 days' time, where my minister is going to come and participate, and that's why it needs a lot of preparation and a lot of bilateral and multilateral discussions in advance, so that by the time he gets here to Paris, everything will be settled and his program will be well prepared. It's really important to understand each other, and this is something that I learned here, that understanding each other is more important than anything else. I believe that it's the most important is to listen to each other, because we all have best practices that we can learn from, and we all have difficulties that we want to tackle and challenges that we want to somehow solve. And there are always questions and issues that might be a hardship for one country, but might be easier for another country or another government, and maybe the solution is already there, you just have to ask.
This cafeteria better be tastier than my school cafeteria.
In this building, as of last year, we received over 120,000 visitors, delegates, participants to conferences, and we've organized over 3,800 conferences and meetings last year.
That's an impressive number.
Yeah, it's an impressive number. Because I didn't think we were going to get into this room. If you, what you see in this room, which is interesting, is this is one of our main meeting rooms in the chateau. The chateau is primarily used for offices upstairs, our Secretary General. Our Sherpa's offices are upstairs and our Deputy Secretary Generals. And these rooms downstairs are used for receptions or are set up, as you see in this room, for meetings. One of the things you'll notice on the walls here are parts of paneling that were brought in by Henri de Rothschild. This decoration, Henri de Rothschild had the chateau built between 1912 when he purchased the land and his move into the chateau in 1922. The organization itself started out as the OEEC, the Organization for European Economic Cooperation, which was founded after World War II to administer the Marshall Plan for the 18 recipient countries who received money from the Marshall Plan to reconstruct Europe after World War II.
Yeah.
That cooperation was so successful that very few years after its implementation, the member countries found themselves as an ensemble at the same or higher level of GDP than they were before the war.
Yeah.
And that successful story inspired the United States and Canada to join, and after they officially became permanent members, active members with those other countries, the organization took on a new name. It could no longer be called European. So as we walk in, you're going to see this room is normally set up for council meetings with placards on the table with all the member countries' names in French alphabetical order. And if you look around the room, what do you see? See this lovely red oak 18th century paneling. It dates from the beginning of the 18th century. This paneling was made by a very famous gentleman called Robert Ducotte, who also did the paneling, a lot of the paneling at Versailles. So this room is quite fun. A lot of people enjoy coming to this room. I'm turning on the chandelier for you, because so you have 17th century paneling between the windows. We are quite confident that the CC initials were for Charlotte. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of positive, good things that take place here. And we hope that this continues.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to visit.
So now a few questions to you, Mom. From the conversations I had today, I understand that interpersonal relationships are of great importance in the OECD. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I would say that that's a very important part of the job, probably also the most fun part of the job. Because when you, for me as a delegate, I try to have a very wide network of people that I work with at the OECD Secretariat and also other countries. And the fact that we have a good, open, trustful communication is extremely important, because on certain issues it's not necessarily that Israel and another OECD country would see things eye to eye. We don't always agree on everything. But when you can better communicate, when you can explain yourself, you can better understand the other position. So you're basically more effective in your job, and you have more chances of building some kind of understanding and arrive to a common position eventually, an agreement.
Another question I had is part of the OECD's job is to provide governments with data. So how do governments use this data to make better policies?
Well, the OECD indeed collects a lot of data, and they have more than 3,000 experts working at the OECD, and the governments work with the OECD Secretariat, the OECD experts, who create benchmarking when you compare countries on a lot of issues. It's everything you can think of related to economy, related to society, environment. And eventually it's kind of a mirror that you see yourself, and it's a bit difficult to ignore. From the perspective of the government, when we have international benchmarking, Israel is on the 5th place in sometimes it's nice and reassuring. Israel is leading in innovations, for example, water governance. But oftentimes it actually reveals something that we didn't know, or brings it to public attention. For example, skills of the adult population, so we're not doing as well in that as other OECD countries. And that is very important, because with the digital disruption, automation of jobs, So in 10 years, if we don't do something about that, we will have a problem. So the government would oftentimes, hopefully, take that analysis, take that data, and build a policy around it and try to change the situation. And what's more important is that this data is not only available to the governments who can use or not use it, but it's also available to everyone else. It's open to the public, and it creates a public debate. The last point I would make is about the importance of, in an organization such as the OECD, especially nowadays, because you see a lot of discussions, oftentimes in social media, using information which is not necessarily trustworthy. You, of course, heard about fake news and populism, etc. So it actually means that having robust information, which is reliable source, is much more important nowadays as well.
So that's it. It's the end of the day. And, after all these interviews, I think the message is truly that if we share ideas and experience, we can much easier solve issues that would take years to solve if we didn't cooperate and share our knowledge. Truly, each country brings something, an approach of their own, and together it all is much easier. A great example to learn from, and it was a really good experience.